We just used one method for factoring this polynomial right here, 5x squared minus 28x minus 12. And because I know that factoring polynomials that don't have a leading coefficient of 1 is a little bit tricky, I want to take a second to go more in depth into the logic for figuring out what numbers belong in our linear factors. Saying that a polynomial like this one of degree 2 is factorable means that we can write it in this form, as two linear factors, or factors with an x to the first power in them, multiplied together. Now the general form of a linear factor is just like this. We have some coefficient times x plus some constant term. What we've been talking about is how to figure out what numbers belong here. Now, of course, one way to do this is to factor by grouping like we have been. That entailed expanding this middle term into two terms that add together to equal it, and then grouping pairs of terms together, so considering this first pair as a chunk and the second pair as a separate chunk, and pulling the greatest common factor that we can out of either of those pairs. This is why we call this factoring by grouping, because we're grouping these terms and grouping these terms. We can use a slightly different kind of logic, though, to get to the same answer. If we've already written out the form that we want the equation to end up in, we can look directly at what we might want from these different coefficients and constant terms based on what we start out with. We know that the way we end up with this x squared term here is by multiplying the term with an x to the first power from each binomial in it. So that means that whatever the coefficient is here, multiplied by this coefficient must equal 5. We can write out all the different factors of 5. We could either have 1 times 5, or we could have -1 times -5. Now, another thing we know is that the two constant terms multiplied together equal the constant term in the original expression. So we can think about the factors of -12 as well. There are a ton of different ones here. I guess I will write them all out, though, just for your pleasure. And voila! There we go. I hope I didn't miss any. Now, we know that the way we get this -28, the coefficient of the middle term here, is by multiplying whatever this number is times this number, and then adding that to this number times this number. So that means we're going to have either 5 times some number plus 1 times some number equals -28, or for the other pair over here, -5 times something minus 1 times something equals -28. Now, since I'd rather have two positive coefficients for x rather than the two negative ones, let's just select to use 5 equals 1 times 5. This makes our job a lot easier, because then it only leaves one combination of factors over here that we can plug in. We just have to figure out which one it is. And of course, as we already saw in the previous quiz, we know that this has to be -6 and this has to be +2. I can fill in the coefficients in front of the x's, and then since I know that the two outer terms multiply when we're trying to find this middle coefficient, I know that the -6 goes in this slot and the 2 goes in this slot, since the inner terms are contributing to this as well.